Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai God Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai God Hari Bol. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Seems like the people out here in the suburbs like to be fashionably late. But we'll begin on time in any case. Chapter 66 from Canto 10. We're with Krishna in Dwaraka. And I'll quickly cover the two chapters that just preceded this one. In chapter 64, we heard about the deliverance of King Nriga and the whole story of his life. He was cursed to become, not cursed, he had the consequence of, by mistake, taking the property of a Brahmana, and it had a very bad consequence. Taking the property of a Brahmana, it became a lizard. And the sons of Krishna were playing in the forest. And as they were playing in the forest, they became thirsty. They wanted water, so they went to a well. And instead of water, they found a lizard. They tried to lift the lizard out of the well, out of compassion, because he was really big, like a mountain. They couldn't lift him. They went and told their father. Krishna came, reached his arm to the bottom of the well, because he had capacity to make his arm longer, and lifted the lizard. And when he touched the lizard, from the lizard body came the body of King Nriga, looking like a demigod. And there you see around Krishna were his sons and other associates, and the well in the background there. So Krishna asked him, please tell your story. How'd you look like a celestial being. How'd you end up becoming a lizard? Tell your story. So he told the story that he was the son of Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku was one of the sons of Vaivasvata Manu, and he gave abundance of charity primarily as a karma kanda purpose. He wanted to gain piety, and he did. Enormous piety, but a mistake was made. One of the cows that he gave away wandered back into the herd of cows, which he gave away to another Brahmin. And then the two Brahmins, seeing that they had the same cow, they came back to King Riga and complained. He volunteered to settle the problem by giving them 1,000 best first-class cows. They refused and walked away. At the time of death, he had to see Yamaraj for that sin of taking the property of a Brahmin. He was given the choice. What do you want, to enjoy all the prosperity of your pious activities and charity and everything, or get this reaction out of the way first and then you can enjoy? So he chose, let me take the reaction for the property of a Brahmin, even if it was unintentional. And so, presto, he became a lizard. And he offered his prayers to Krishna. Krishna accepted his prayers, accepted him, and he requested to go next to the heavenly realm, where he could enjoy the fruits of his abundant charity to brahmanas, because that's the fruit of piety. 4 things: Janma, Aishvarya, Shruta, and Shri. So he wanted that enjoyment. Krishna gave him the benediction after this life. In heaven, you'll come to me. So off he went. King Riga boarded a celestial airplane, and right before everybody's eyes, he went off to a heavenly planet, doesn't say which one. And Krishna gave him this benediction that he would eventually, after this life, come to him. Then Krishna went back to Dwarka and informed everybody what's the consequence of even unintentionally taking the property of a Brahmin. It's like really heavy. He wasn't, it's like, just letting them know there's very serious consequences of stealing, but particularly the property of a Brahmin, what to speak of intentionally. So be very careful with the property of a Brahmin. And that was chapter 64. Then this afternoon we heard about Balaram's visiting Vrindavan back in Dwarka. He took permission from Krishna to go visit the devotees in Vrindavan because they were too much feeling separation from Krishna. But Krishna didn't go. We had some extended discussion about that. Balaram went. And when he went, he first of all paid his respects to Nanda and Jasoda, and then the other elder, because he spent his youth in Vrindavan, so he knew everybody and everybody knew him. And the proper standard kinds of exchanges. How are our relatives in Dwarka? And how is everybody doing here in Vrindavan and all those things? Does Krishna remember us and all those things? The elders. And then it doesn't mention it mentions only very briefly his spending time with the cowherd boys. But feeling so much separation from Krishna, he didn't do much cow herding when he was there. And then he spent time pacifying the gopis who had been in association with Krishna when they were youth in Vrindavan, and they had given themselves completely to Krishna. So Krishna had a plan to pacify them by giving different kinds of messages to different persons by name. And I want to read this again. It's very nice. This is Sridhar Swami, a commentator on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Balaram first consoled them by scriptural teachings. Then he praised them to remove their despondency. Then he described Krishna's mercy directed to them. Then he described with regret various events which delayed Krishna from returning. Then he promised to bring Krishna back with a believable oath. Then he frightened them by saying that Krishna, who held them dearer than 1,000,000 of his lives, would suffer intense grief on hearing of their crying. So he very carefully brought their sorrowful emotion at least to a point of check for the time being. And then we heard that Balaram, Krishna encouraged him specifically to do this. The younger gopis, those other groups of gopis that were not his, Krishna's gopis, he engaged with them for 2 months in the evening hours when there was a full moon by his arrangement every evening. You see in the background there's a full moon. And in this way, he spent 2 months giving satisfaction to the residents of Vrindavan in a variety of ways. During this dancing evening activity, he wanted to bathe in the Jamuna, and he called the Jamuna to come. She didn't come. She thought he was a little tipsy. And so he took his plow and started dragging the Jamuna. She understood, I made a big mistake. She came before him, Krishna, Balaram, and the gopis bathed. And after those 2 months, he went back to Dwarka. Krishna asked him everything, privately about the gopis and publicly about everybody else. And that was that chapter 65. So now it's back to 66. What's 66? It's the situation that Krishna dealt with while Balaram was out of town. In Vrindavan, something else happened in Dwarka. That something else that happened in Dwarka was his encounter with Paundraka. So chronologically parallel events, that's why they're being narrated this way. Paundraka was emboldened by the flattery of childish men who told him, "You are Vasudeva, the Supreme Lord and Master of the universe, who have now descended to the earth." Thus, he imagined himself to be the infallible personality of Godhead. There he is with his flute, his peacock feather, all his ornaments, and the flattering followers. Paundraka. Beware of praise. Although Paundraka was an ordinary man, he began to believe the praise of others. Shukadeva Goswami goes on. While Balaram was away, visiting Nanda's village in Braja, the ruler of Kurusha, foolishly thinking, "I am the Supreme Lord Vasudeva," sent a messenger to Lord Krishna. So where is Kurusha? It turns out there's different Kurushas. Just like there's different Vidyadharas. There's lots of them in India. So there's different Kurushas. For example, one of them was the kingdom of Dantavakra, king of Kurusha. But there's another Kurusha that's very near to Kashi. In fact, Paundraka was very close friend with the king of Kashi. So that comes up in the story. So the king of Kashi at that time also was a supporter of Paundraka. And I just included this. It's not part of the Bhagavatam narration, but there's this Western story, the emperor that had no clothes. Do you know that story? Do you know the story? Your son knows the story. Do you know the story? I'm asking your father. Do you know the story? Okay, let's hear the story. A little bit. Say what you know. You're a little shy. Okay. I think it's a European kind of story, but there was a tailor that of great renown, and he said, "I would make for you the best possible attire, but you have to let me go to a private place where I can make it privately." And he brought it out, and he wasn't holding anything. It was nothing. So he said, "You have to wear this, and you'll be the most attractive king in town." So he went out to the public, and everyone was seeing he doesn't have any clothes, but they didn't say it because they didn't want to get slammed by the king. But a little boy pointed out, "Hey, the emperor has no clothes." And sure enough, he had no clothes. So if one hears something again and again and again and again and again and again and again, there's this Vedic story, it's the other way around, that someone is told, you've become a ghost. You've heard that story? No. You've become a ghost. So everywhere he went, they would go, "Oh, no, you've become a ghost. You've become a ghost." And everyone said, "You become a ghost." So he believed it because everyone said it. You become a ghost. So this is the other way around. You have fantastic clothes, but he had no clothes. There's another. It's a celebrated story, European story. The emperor has no clothes. It took a little innocent boy to say it. And that was the situation with Paundraka. Because he just heard it from enough people, he started to believe he was Vasudeva. He even pasted on mechanically 2 extra arms. It's coming up. So that's a problem. It more often works the other way. People say something bad about us and we start to believe it. But if somebody starts to flatter us, we may start to believe it, accepting flattery and assuming an unreal identity. So that's a problem. That was certainly Paundraka's problem. Thus, slow-witted King Paundraka sent a messenger to the inscrutable Lord Krishna in Dwarka. Prabhupada writes in his commentary, it's something like small children at play, and one child is anointing another king, another child is king, and he is wearing a crown. Just not very, 10 days ago, I was traveling from Orlando to Potomac or to Washington, D.C. And in the overhead compartment for luggage was a crown. Apparently, it came from Orlando, came from Disney World. So somebody's wearing a crown thinking, so children sometimes do like that. Less intelligent children or playful children may do like that. And Paundraka was like that. Paundraka was thinking that Krishna had falsely assumed his title, his name, his symbols of Vishnu, resulting from false flattery of others. In exactly the same way that he had become convinced that he was the Supreme. There's a Sanskrit phrase for it. Atmavan manyate jagat. Prabhupada would speak that phrase many times, not too many times, but it's common that people, the Western language is projection. You think that other people are like you. You see the world like you are. Atmavan Manyate Jagat. The Jagat is like you are. Whatever your character and quality, people are like you. So our acharyas have some comments about this. Here's Vishwanath. The reason Shukadev Goswami repeats here for the second time that Paundraka sent a message to Sri Krishna is that the great sage Shukadev was astonished at Paundraka's extreme foolishness. So a messenger showed up in Dwarka, the messenger from Paundraka. Lacking all dharma, he came into the Sudharma assembly hall to see Krishna served by the Yadus, and he delivered the message from Paundraka. The ignorant fellow did not get any obstruction. Since he was a Brahmana, the doorkeepers did not prevent him. He found lotus-eyed Krishna in his royal assembly and relayed the king's message to that Almighty Lord. Come closer, because people are going to want to sit where you're sitting. You watch. Come sit in here, because people are going to want to sit out there. Guaranteed. But they can't sit there if you're sitting there. Okay. So here's the message. Look at this script. I am the one and only Lord Vasudeva, who lives in all beings, and there is no other. It is I who have descended to this world to show mercy to the living beings. Therefore, give up your false name. Commentary by Vishwanath. These verses relaying the message of Paundraka have another true meaning. And he goes through the Sanskrit. Thus, the meaning of Paundraka's statement is, I am not Vasudeva incarnate, but rather you alone and no one else are Vasudeva. Since you have descended to show mercy to the living beings, please make me give up my false designation, which is like that of an oyster claiming to be silver. Complying with his request, Krishna will say, I certainly make you give up your false designations. I will certainly. So this goes on lots of times with our acharyas. When some statement is made, one reading is this, but a perfectly other meaning is that. And since that is more conformed with reality, they like that instead of what was intended by the speaker. Krishna does this back and forth all the time with Radharani. And the gopis do with Jatila. And she says something and they respond. Okay. Oh, Sattvata, give up my personal symbols, which out of foolishness you now carry, and come to me for shelter. If you do not, then you must give me battle. Vishwanath writes, this is a second meeting. Out of foolishness I have assumed an imitation conch shell, disc, lotus, and club, and you are maintaining these by allowing me to use them. It is unjust that you have not subdued me and removed these imitation symbols. Therefore, please fight with me. Take away these symbols and mercifully grant me liberation by killing me. That's another rendering of the Sanskrit from the message of King Paundraka. King Ugrasena and the other members of the assembly laughed loudly when they heard this vain boasting of unintelligent Paundraka. What did Krishna do? The personality of Godhead, after enjoying the jokes of the assembly, told the messenger, relay this following message. Here's Krishna's message. You fool, I will indeed let loose the weapons you boast in this way. When your head is severed from your body by my disc, you will lie dead, O fool, your face covered by vultures, herons, and vata birds. Your body will then become the shelter of dogs. That was Krishna's message back to Paundraka. When the Lord had thus spoken, the messenger conveyed his insulting reply to his master in its entirety, hearing which made Paundraka's face turn pale. Lord Krishna then mounted his chariot and went to the vicinity of Kashi. The vicinity of Kashi, because that's where the kingdom of Paundraka was, in the vicinity of Kashi. Now the description in Krishna book slightly differs from the Bhagavatam version. When Krishna came, according to Krishna book, Paundraka happened to be in the city of Kashi, visiting his friend, the king of Kashi. The Bhagavatam, from which the Krishna book is written, they were nearby, and so it's slightly different. But here we go. Upon observing Lord Krishna enter the kingdom of Karusha, which was near Kashi, preparing for battle, the mighty warrior Paundraka was a fierce fighter. Paundraka quickly went out of the city with 3 full military divisions. Military divisions, we hear about it. Akshohini divisions. You've heard that term before? Akshohini. So, when Jarasandha came to attack Krishna, the commentary gives some details about how many this and that and the other thing. One Akshohini division is really big. I forget the number. I probably should learn the number, but it's so many elephants, so many chariots with horses, and so many infantry, and so many thises, and so many that's. And that's one. So 3 full military divisions came pouring out of the capital. And King of Kashi followed behind, leading the rear guard with 3 Akshohini divisions. So 3 plus 3, that's 6. And there we see Krishna is blowing out his conch shell because he's getting ready for battle. Out come the military soldiers. Look, there's Krishna and Paundraka with 2 extra arms pasted on. He's on the left. He's astonished to see Krishna. Krishna is smiling. Lord Krishna saw that Paundraka was carrying the Lord's own insignia, such as the conch shell disc, sword, and club, and also an imitation Sharanga bow and Srivatsa mark. He wore a mock Kaustubha gem, was decorated with a garland of forest flowers, and was dressed in upper and lower garments of fine yellow silk, just like Krishna. His banner bore a fake image of Garuda, and he wore a valuable crown and gleaming shark-shaped earrings. 2 extra arms were mechanically fastened to his body. Must have been funny. Krishna laughed. Lord Hari laughed heartily when he saw how the king was dressed up in exact imitation of his own appearance, just like an actor on the stage. It's a nice picture. He's Krishna smiling. Looks very happy. Another one. He looks very happy. So now the battle's about to begin. The enemies of Lord Hari attacked him with tridents, clubs, bludgeons, pikes, rishtis, barbed darts, lances, swords, axes, and arrows. Usually they have all these other names. I don't even know what they are. At least giving some names. So there's the warriors on one side. But Lord Krishna fiercely struck back at the army of Paundraka and Kashiraj, which consisted of elephants, chariots, cavalry, and infantry. The Lord tormented his enemies with his club, sword, Sudarshan disc, and arrows, just as the fire of annihilation torments the various kinds of creatures at the end of the cosmic age. So Krishna is doing battle and some people are getting wounded in battle. The battlefield strewn with the dismembered chariots, horses, elephants, humans, mules, and camels that had been cut to pieces by the Lord's disc weapon, shone like the gruesome playground of Lord Bhutapati, giving pleasure to the wise. Krishna is pretty furious in battle. Lord Krishna then addressed Paundraka. My dear Paundraka, the very weapons you spoke of through your messenger, I now release unto you. O fool, now I shall make you renounce my name, which you have falsely assumed. And if I am defeated, and you are victorious, I shall certainly surrender unto you. So now, more battle directly between Krishna and Paundraka. Having thus derided Paundraka, Lord Krishna destroyed his chariot with his sharp arrows. The Lord then cut off his head with the Sudarshan disc, just as Lord Indra lops off a mountain peak with his thunderbolt weapon. Then, with his arrows, Krishna similarly severed Kashiraj's head. Notice it's flying in the air. From his body, sending it flying into Kashi city like a lotus flower thrown by the wind. So their commentators want to know, why did he do this? Why did Krishna throw Kashiraj's head into the city? And they supply the reason. As he went off to battle, the king of Kashi had promised the citizens, my dear residents of Kashi, today I will bring the enemy's head into the midst of the city. Have no doubt of this. The king's sinful, proud queens had also boasted to their maidservants, today our master will certainly bring the head of the Lord of Dwaraka. For this reason, the playful Lord Sri Krishna threw the king's head into the city of Kashi to astonish the inhabitants. By constantly meditating upon the Supreme Lord, Paundraka shattered all his material bonds. Indeed, by imitating Lord Krishna's appearance, O king, he ultimately became Krishna conscious. Not the best kind, not favorable, but Krishna conscious. Commentary says, his material bondage was destroyed by his continual meditation on the Lord. He was like an insect trapped by another insect. It's right in the Bhagavatam. This example is given in several places. By constantly thinking of the other insect, in hatred, the insect develops a similar body. You recall reading that example? It's in the Bhagavatam, and it's in relation to Paundraka specifically. So I was searching for images for an insect trapping another insect. This is the best I could come up with. An insect trapping another insect, and he comes out looking like the insect that trapped him. Because out of fear or hatred, that there's a nice teaching about this in the seventh canto of the Bhagavatam. The seventh canto of the Bhagavatam, the entire canto is spoken by Narada. Well, Shukadeva is narrating what Narada says at the time of the Rajasuya Yagya. The Rajasuya Yagya is where Yudhishthira was to be crowned, anointed as king, and the plan was the Yudhishthira would select the most honored person, and eulogies would be spoken about that most honored person. And of course, he wanted to honor Krishna. And so grandfather Bhishma spoke the glories of Krishna in front of the whole assembly. And there was one person in the assembly who didn't like it. Who was that? Oh, you good. So what did Shishupal do? He started blaspheming Krishna. Then what happened? Bhima wanted to finish him, but Krishna told him stop. And he went on, and 100 times he blasphemed Krishna. And Krishna just took his Sudarshan chakra. The speaking part of Shishupal's body was separated from the rest. And then what happened? The soul of Shishupal hovered in the air like a bright light, and then merged into the body of Krishna. Sayuja Mukti. Sayuja Mukti. So they probably had to clean up the bloody mess, and then the Rajasuya Yagya went on. And chapter 1 of Canto 7 begins with a question. Maharishi Parikshit asks Narada Muni in the presence of Krishna, because Krishna was there. So he's asking Narada Muni, who's like the guru of Pandavas, one of the gurus of the Pandavas, how did this happen? Shishupal was such a bad person. He was so inimical towards Krishna. And great elevated personalities, they may try for years and years and lifetimes, great austerities and great difficulty, and still not get liberation. This bad person got liberation. Please explain. Remember that? Then what was his answer? Yes, that comes in Canto 7 for sure. But in chapter 1, he says, even if the thought of Krishna is bad, if one's thought of Krishna is absorbed, then one gets liberation. It's so powerful to think of Krishna, even if it's bad. Now, that's not bhakti, but it's Krishna consciousness. And he even says, when there's fear or hatred, those two emotions are mentioned. Then when one's afraid of something, then one may think of that something all the time. Or if one is filled with hate towards something, one may think of that something all the time, or someone. He said it's very powerful. It's a very powerful force, fear and hate. That's how it happened to Shishupal. It was so inimical, so virulently inimical to Krishna. He got purified. Here's what Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur says. By continually meditating on the four-handed form of the Lord Paundraka, achieved Sarupya Mukti and was promoted to the Vaikuntha planets. Wow. So we don't do that, though. We don't follow Paundraka. But that's the power of thinking of Krishna, with absorption especially. So we have lots of opportunity to practice through our sadhana bhakti. It's the difficulty is we're distracted, isn't it? That's the difficulty. But something that can help us to become attracted rather than distracted is to understand that the power of unbroken meditation upon Krishna. And the best means, according to scripture, is the holy name. And there's many other things we can do to assist us with that unbroken meditation upon Krishna. One of those is deity worship. Some of you may have deities in your home. It's recommended for at some stage of your spiritual practice. Because for those that have deities, and you worship your deities very nicely, something happens. You start to get attached to them. And then you feel some reciprocation with them. Maybe you're one of those persons that have some attachment to your deity, or you know somebody that has attachment to their deity. And it's part of what helps you become concentrated, because it's with you. I'll give two examples. This is householder X somewhere. The elder couple, she's been the housewife has been worshiping her deity for so many years, 25 something years, something like that. And she doesn't do deity worship at the temple. So I just, out of curiosity, I asked. And she said, the husband said, she does 7 artis a day. She's very attached to her deity. Doesn't have time for anything else. She cooks and cleans, but she doesn't have time for a temple worship. I said, wow, it's like 7 artis a day. You must be absorbed. She revealed something that my guess is she doesn't reveal it to others. I said, well, share with me some of your realizations of your relationship with your deity. She didn't want to, but she said, she wasn't bragging, but she said, every day, 7 times a day, when I make my offering, to make the offering to Krishna, I take his flute and I put his flute down at a certain place. And then when the offering is done, I take the offering away and put the flute back. But on 3 occasions, when I went to put the flute back, it wasn't there. I looked at the deity, he was holding the flute. And he was smiling. That's all. She didn't make a big deal about it. But there was some indication for her heart on the bhakti level that Krishna is accepting. And, she was attached to her deity. She wasn't talkative about it, or, some people are a little boastful. That wasn't what was her heart. Was just she was attached to her deity. And another thing just happened in the temple. It was in Alachua, and there's a lot of older devotees, senior devotees in Alachua, and they're all those sets of deities they have. They make an announcement who worship, who dress this deity and that deity, and the other deity. And one morning in particular, the Shamsundar, Radha Shamsundar, the tall Radha Shamsundar, had really beautiful white flowers, and they were so fragrant you could smell them from the altar just standing in front of them. So I couldn't help myself. I just like giving the morning class said, whoever made those garlands, compliments. It's really amazing. And the lady that dressed the deities, she didn't. She just volunteered. She was there making more garlands, and said it's. She gave a little quick explanation while she was continuing to make the garland. She wasn't like boasting, but to get those flowers during the winter season, they die off, so we have to bring them inside. And then as soon as the weather gets a little warmer again, we bring them outside. And it's around this time of the year that they provide daily abundant flowers, and they're very fragrant. We offer them to Radha Shyamsundar. Because that was it. But it's like a meditation for her that this is just part of the worship of Radha Shyamsundar. I don't know about her deities at home. Didn't ask. But, the sense was there's a palpable relationship between this devotee and Radha Shyamsundar. And there's many, 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 so many other cases, I'm sure. But those are just two. And when that attachment comes for the deity form of the Lord, then it strengthens the tendency for attachment to Krishna in the form of his name. Not so long ago, 4 times so far, I've gone through very detailed description of the 6 Goswamis. All of them, except one of them, had deity. Even Raghunath Das's deity was the Govardhan Shila that was given to him by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That was his deity. It was little, but that was his deity. And how much love did he have for Govardhan? Whew. But one that didn't have a deity was Raghunath Bhatta. But his deity was Srimad Bhagavatam. And similar, Gadadhar Pandit had Gopinath deity, Tota Gopinath, and Srimad Bhagavatam. And Raghunath Bhatta was recognized even in his youth, what to speak of when he went to Vrindavan, as totally dedicated to Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's another way you become deeply involved in the message and sound vibration and the teachings and so forth of Srimad Bhagavatam. You will find it will enhance your absorption in the holy name. So it's not a distraction from the main chanting of the holy name. It's something that will assist. Or serving the Vaishnavas, or living in a holy place. So without going into it, there's examples of Vaishnavas, contemporary and previous Vaishnavas, that became very, very attached to those things. Serving the Vaishnavas. In the mood of not just checking the box, but in the mood of serving the Vaishnavas. One gets the mercy of the Supreme Lord by serving the Vaishnavas. You know the Chaitanya Charitamrita story of Kala Krishna Das? It is taking the remnants of prasad from all the Vaishnavas in Bengal. And during the time of Mahaprabhu, how many were there? Vaishnavas in Bengal were there. Too many. And the story is told by one exchange. But then he went to all the householders and he glorified, when they said no, 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 he would glorify the Vaishnavas and then somehow trick them so he could take the remnants. You know the story. And because of that service to the Vaishnavas, he got mercy from Lord Chaitanya that nobody got. He was able to drink the foot wash of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya watching him do it. Because Lord Chaitanya was very strict. He didn't allow. He didn't allow. Bhaktisiddhanta didn't allow. You know that story? Bhaktisiddhanta didn't allow people to wash his feet. There's a nice little event where there was during his life, as a young man, of course he was Naishtika Brahmachari, but his father, Bhaktivinoda, was held in high esteem by two groups of differing personalities. It sometimes happens that people get into disputes. And one of those occasions was where who is greater, the Vaishnava or the Brahmana? There's some background, but because of time, and I want to get back to the Bhagavatam, it started getting dangerous because sometimes intellectuals talk nicely and sometimes they don't, and it was becoming life threatening. So both groups approached Bhaktivinoda, please settle this. And he was very, very ill. So he was speaking out loud in his son's presence. Isn't there someone that can explain this properly and clarify the matter? So Bhaktisiddhanta volunteered, if you order me, I can do that. So he did that, and what he delivered is now, because it's common practice in intellectual circles. You deliver a paper, and you put it in writing, and you summarize when you deliver the paper. But then there's a document that stands for what you spoke about, citing your sources, and so there's a whole bunch of rules. That's now available in English, Brahmanism and Vaishnavism. So it was a 2-day speaking and then some further discussions. The first day he was glorifying Brahmanism. And the Brahmins go, boy, he really knows his stuff. Brahmins are superlative. And the next day was Vaishnavas are superlative above the Brahmanas because, and details and details. And so it's all in this document, Brahmanism and Vaishnavism. And, we got a standing applause from both groups at the end of both days. And some further discussion in his concluding remarks. And then he was ready to leave. And as he was ready to leave, there was a stampede because they wanted to wash his feet and take the water from his feet. And he didn't allow it. So it was a problem. Another problem. The police came, got a big bucket, and had forced his foot into the water and sprinkled the water so he could leave peacefully. Okay, so now back to the Bhagavatam. Paundraka got Krishna's mercy. Even his mood was a negative mood, but there was so much contemplation on the personality of Godhead. In several places it's described. Sarupya Mukti means he went to Vaikuntha. He lives in Vaikuntha in a four-armed form. Pretty amazing. Having thus killed envious Paundraka and his ally, Krishna returned to Dwarka. As he entered the city, the Siddhas of heaven chanted his immortal nectarian glories. Meanwhile, back in Kashi, seeing a head decorated with earrings lying at the gate of the royal palace inside the city, but in front of the royal palace inside the city. The people present were puzzled. Some of them asked, "What is this?" And others said, "It's a head. But whose is it?" They thought, must be Krishna's, because that's what the king of Kashi said. He's going to deliver us Krishna's head to show his greatness. But after examining very carefully, they could understand it was king of Kashi's head. When they recognized it as the head of their king, the lord of Kashi, his queens, sons, and other relatives, along with all the citizens of the city, began to cry pitifully, "Alas! We are killed, oh my lord, my lord." After the king's son, Sudakshina, remember his name? Sudakshina? The son of Kashi was Sudakshina. We're going to hear some more about Sudakshina. After he performed the funeral for his father, he was the eldest son of the king. He made not a public declaration, but he made a resolution in his mind. Only by killing my father's murderer can I avenge his death. Thus, the charitable Sudakshina, together with his priests, began worshipping Lord Maheshwara with great attention. So that Maheshwara means Lord Shiva. And in Prabhupada's Krishna book, he speaks very clearly about the deity in the kingdom of Kashi to this day is Vishwanath, or Lord Shiva. This is the picture of the deity. The temple of Lord Vishwanath is still existing in Varanasi, and many thousands of pilgrims still gather daily in that temple. It's directly taken from Krishna book. And this is a photo of the deity in Kashi, Vishwanath deity. Thousands come daily. So that's the deity worshipped. Satisfied by the worship, the powerful Lord Shiva appeared in the sacred precinct of Avimukta, or the presiding deity at the Tirtha, and offered Sudakshina his choice of benedictions. The prince chose as his benediction a means to slay his father's killer. Because Lord Shiva is the Vaishnavanam Yatar Shambhu. Now look what his worshipper is asking. So Lord Shiva was a little tricky. Here's what Lord Shiva replied. Accompanied by brahmanas, serve the fire, Dakshinagni fire, the original priest, by employing black magic. Then the Dakshinagni fire, together with many pramatas, we heard this word pramatas. Here is the meaning again. Pramatas, they're powerful mystics who are in Lord Shiva's retinue. So the Dakshinagni fire, together with many pramatas, will fulfill your desire if you direct it against someone inimical to the Brahmanas. Now, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahman Hitaya Cha Jagat Hitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. That's not Krishna. But Sudakshina thought it was Krishna. Shiva was clever. Lord Shiva thus knew that if Sudakshina attempted to direct the power of this ritual against Lord Krishna, who is Brahmanya Deva, Sudakshina himself would perish. But Sudakshina thought, Atmavan Manjate Jagat, right? Remember that? He thought that Krishna was greedy for Brahmanas' respect, and thus he had no respect for the Brahmanas. So, he followed what Lord Shiva said. After doing this worship for a long time, the fire rose up out of the altar pit, assuming the form of an extremely fearsome, naked person. The fiery creature's beard and tuft of hair were like molten copper, and his eyes emitted blazing hot cinders. It's a nice painting. His face looked most frightful, with its fangs and terrible arched and furrowed brows. As he licked the corners of his mouth with his tongue, the demon shook his flaming trident. Something like out of the movies, right? On legs as tall as palm trees, the monster raced towards Dwarka in the company of ghostly spirits, shaking the ground and burning the world in all directions. Hard to get a good image to illustrate that one. But there he is. Seeing the approach of the fiery demon created by the Abhichara ritual, the residents of Dwarka were all struck with fear, like animals terrified by a forest fire. But Krishna wasn't disturbed. Distraught with fear, the people cried out to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was then playing dice in the royal court. Save us, save us! Oh, of the three worlds, from this fire burning up the city. When Lord Krishna heard the people's agitation and saw that even his own men were disturbed, that most worthy giver of shelter simply laughed and told them, "Do not fear. I shall protect you." The Almighty Lord, the internal and external witness of all, understood that the monster had been produced by Lord Shiva from the sacrificial fire. To defeat the demon, Krishna dispatched his disc weapon, who was waiting at his side. Sri Krishna, this is Vishwanath's commentary. Krishna was enjoying a gambling match and did not want to be disturbed by such an insignificant matter as the attack from a fiery demon. Sri Krishna simply ordered his disc weapon to take the necessary steps. Sure enough, that Sudarshana, the disc weapon of Lord Mukunda, blazed forth like millions of suns. His effulgence blazed like the fire of universal annihilation, and with his heat he pained the sky in all directions, heaven and earth, and also the fiery demon. Frustrated by the power of Lord Krishna's weapon, O king, the fiery creature produced by black magic turned his face away and retreated. So what does that mean? When it failed to harm Krishna, it went back to the person who released the black magic weapon. Created for violence, the demon then returned to Varanasi, where he surrounded the city and burned Sudakshina and his priest to death, even though Sudakshina was his creator. According to the methods of black art mantras instructed in the Tantra, if the mantra fails to kill the enemy, then, because it must kill someone, it kills the original creator. We're almost done. Lord Vishnu's disc also entered Varanasi in pursuit of the fiery demon and proceeded to burn everything in the city to the ground. After burning down the entire city of Varanasi, Lord Vishnu's Sudarshana chakra returned to the side of Sri Krishna, whose actions are effortless. And finally, this is the benediction that comes at the end of the chapter. Any mortal, that's us, who recounts this heroic pastime of Lord Uttama shlokas, or who simply hears it attentively, will become free from all sins. Plus, we'll become attracted to Krishna. We had some discussion in the other sessions. Do you know any Bhagavad Gita verses? How about your sister? You know some Bhagavad Gita verses? Yeah? You know any? Do you know this one? The one that starts Janma Karma Shime Divyam? No? Do you? You know that one? Very good. How about you, the young girl back here? You know the verse? Can you say it, please? One more. Not sure? Okay. Okay. Any one of the three of you want to say what the meaning is? Let's do this. What does Janma mean? Just like Krishna Janmastami. What does Janma mean? Birth. Janma. Karma means work or activity. Yeah, activity. Janma karma chame divyam means transcendental. Divyam, like divine. Same. Janma karma chame divyam. Evam yo veti tattvataha. Veti, it comes from the root word vid, which means to know. Tattvataha means in truth. So one who knows in truth my janma and karma, one who knows in truth my appearance and activities, Chaktva deham, gives up, when giving up this body, Chaktva deham, punar janma. Punar means again, punar janma na. So just by understanding the transcendental nature of Krishna's janma and his karma, his appearance and activities, punar janma na. No more birth and death. Voila. Pretty simple. All you have to do is know the transcendental nature of Krishna's janma and karma. So now we're hearing about Krishna's janma and karma. And one of the things about Krishna's activities is he doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to do anything. He was busy playing a game, playing chess, or whatever it was. So, Sudarshan, can you take care of this? But didn't even have to say it. Just, it's the Sanskrit word is icha, means he just desires. And then, voila. You know that word? The French word. Voila means, it's like bhavati. And so it was. That the transcendental nature of Krishna is he doesn't have to do anything. Everything comes from him, but he doesn't have to do anything. How is that? Our acharyas explain. It happened through the agency of his potencies. And what's the extent of Krishna's potencies? Unlimited. What activates those potencies? He just desires. And as soon as he desires, stuff happens. It's like creation. How does creation happen? The whole cosmic manifestation, all of the universes and the whole shebang. How does it happen? Icha. What's that icha? What's that desire of Krishna? What's Mahavishnu? It's nice. It's very simple. Two things, compassion and compassion. One compassionate desire is that during cosmic annihilation, the living entities are within his body in a susupti state. Susupti means suspended consciousness, not unconscious, but like under anesthesia. That's susupti. It's not consciousness is zero, it's just suspended, very covered. So in that susupti state, the living entities are there for the duration of the cosmic manifestation, which is a long time. And Krishna has a compassionate desire, icha. What's that? These living entities, they should be unlimitedly happy, but they're not experiencing that. I wish that they could experience that. That's all, icha. And second, this is described in several places in our scriptural texts. Within Mahavishnu, there's Rama Devi. Note, we never see Mahavishnu with Rama Devi at his feet, massaging his feet. Why? She's within. She can be without, she can be within, no problem. She's within. And he's enjoying eternal pastimes within with Rama Devi. And at a distance is the reflection, or Chaya Devi, of his internal potency, Rama Devi. But that's what Pradhan is. Pradhan is described the maid servant of Rama Devi, an expansion of Rama Devi, her reflection. And he sees that she's wanting some service, compassion. Rama Devi understands these two desires, and she fulfills those desires. How does she fulfill that desire? Was Mahavishnu is glancing at Chaya Devi or Pradhan, wishing that she could also have some service. She wants some service. She should have some service. Rama Devi takes the living entities who in the susupti state, transfers them to the glance of Mahavishnu, and the glance of Mahavishnu carries the living entities along with her subpotency, time energy, into Pradhan. And the whole shebang starts. He doesn't have to do anything, just icha. And then his Shaktis do the whole everything. And that's detail about creation. The same thing happens with all of Krishna's pastimes. There's his internal and there's his external. They're all pastimes. And they're just being carried out by his unlimited potencies. I know somebody that had a bad thing happen to them. Maybe you know somebody. Somewhere along the line, maybe recently, something bad happened to them. So how does God let bad things happen to good people? You know that one. So, and how are we supposed to take it when bad things happen to us? Because we're trying to be good devotees, and then here comes this bad thing. Or maybe a bunch of bad things. Or whatever. So how do you see bad things? No, if you're Paundraka, depends on how fixed your consciousness is upon the Supreme Lord. That's how you're going to take it, depending upon your consciousness on the Supreme Lord. But if your consciousness is immersed in devotion to the Supreme Lord, you take it as somehow, I may not understand it at the moment because it hurts, but it's mercy. It's helping to purify me and free me from my entanglement in the complexities of repeated birth and death. That's how the Supreme Lord acts with his devotees. He acts differently with those that aren't. But if you when you understand, so back to the verse, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, Evam Yoveti Tattva. So it's not just this matter of you have a Bhakti Shastri exam and what's the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities, and you check the box in a multiple choice question, you go back to Godhead. It's more than theoretical. It's a matter of realizing the transcendental nature of Krishna's janma and his karma. And the only way to understand that is through bhakti. Say it negatively. You can't understand it otherwise. Say it positively. You can understand it through bhakti. And how does bhakti get awakened? Well, by doing what we're doing right now. Hearing the name, fame, qualities, pastimes, etc. of Krishna. That was Prabhupada's gift to the world, was to give these transcendental literatures to help cleanse us of coverings and awaken our understanding of Krishna's transcendental nature, of his appearance and activities. And we were discussing, there's no limit. There's 18,000 verses in the Bhagavatam, but there's unlimited numbers of verses of glorification of Krishna. And we like hearing. At least we like hearing because we have some faith that will help cleanse me of my forgetfulness. We don't have to be like Paundraka and learn the hard way. We can try to become nice devotees and learn the nice way. And even as we're trying to learn the nice way, there's bumps, and there's struggles, and there's misfortune, and there's things that happen. Some good things that happen. Maybe your deity will take the flute and put it back in his hand, and you'll realize he's accepting your service. Maybe it won't happen. Maybe it'll happen. But you should know he's accepting your service. And even your chanting may be distracted chanting, but like this, there's this phrase, broken names. But he's hearing everything, and encouraging us to come to him. We're a little complacent, or a little attached, or more than a little attached. But progress. And the idea is to make a little more progress, and don't wait, because time is ticking. Who knows? Who knows? It's quite uncertain. Well, one thing is certain. Death is certain. But when is uncertain. I'll forward to you, Shambhari. There's this nice little 2.5-minute video. Did I send it to you? Kadamba Kannada Swami speaking, Shambhari. Did I send that to you? I'll send it to you. You can forward to the others because you have this. These are, huh? Yes. Okay, but I have one where they cleared up the Russian. Okay, it's very short, but our offering is our life, and it's meager. But we want Krishna to accept us. That's the meaning of the Mahamantra. Krishna, please accept me. And it's quite meager. Our life is quite how significant. Quite insignificant. Quite insignificant. But it's what we have to offer. And to offer with our heart, make the heart shine. And there's methods. The holy name, the Srimad Bhagavatam, worshipping your deity, residing in a holy place, and serving the Vaishnavas. 5 most potent. So do them with your heart, to your capacity. Try to be not distracted. Try to be absorbed when you're doing those things. and you'll get closer. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. Paundraka, the false Vasudeva. Yes.
So many different purposes he achieves through those leelas.
The different what?
Purposes. So many different purposes he achieves through his leela.
Processes?
Purpose.
Purposes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've often wondered through this particular leela, what exactly is Krishna trying to portray to us? I mean,
Oh,
there must be some reason why this happened.
yeah. I mean, Prabhupada goes deeply into the subject of people believing that there's something they're not, and specifically even people believing that they're God or deluding others to believe that they're God or pretending that they're God. And, Krishna doesn't like it. So beware of such people. Maybe more common is impersonalists who say, "I'm God, you're God." I don't know if you've met people like that. I've met people like that. They're really into it, and they're into persuading other people that you're God, I'm God, we're all God. But that's the Paundrakas. Yeah, there are such people, or influences. It's just say a materialist that presents himself to be something that he's not, independent or something. So that's the contrast with the life of a pure devotee or pure devotion. Yes, that's a purpose. Don't be enamored by imitation personalities, because there's lots of imitation personalities out there, and don't become one of them. Anything? Yes.
As you mentioned in the class that Paundraka got Sarupya Mukti, but until we are not get purified, we cannot serve. Even he got a same form of Lord Vishnu, still he has envy because he is doing acting like an actor kind of. So how he can serve the Lord? Because
Positively? How we can serve the Lord positively is your question?
yes, Maharaj.
Well, we have our vidhis of sadhana bhakti. We start there. With faith that these vidhis of sadhana bhakti will cleanse the unwanted and awaken the wanted. With that faith.
But how Paundraka is serving Lord in spiritual world? Because he has so
So
much envy.
is your question, what's he doing in the spiritual world?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, that wasn't. I thought your question is,
No,
what are we
means
supposed to do?
how he can got that position
How
because
he can get it by Krishna is merciful.
not purified.
Krishna is merciful. He became purified by that meditation upon Krishna, and by Krishna's killing him, all the persons, Canto 3, Chapter 7, all the persons killed by Krishna achieved liberation.
Kamsa Maharaj.
Ah, everyone. And then the verse says, even those killed by Balaram and Arjuna and Bhima and others, they also got liberation. It was because it's on Krishna's behalf. So, because Krishna, that's contact with Krishna is all powerful. Now, the consequence of everyone is not they go back to Godhead, just like the King Nriga story. He went to heaven because he had a desire to go to enjoy the prosperity of his fruitive gifts of charity and so forth. So that was fulfilled, and then he went back by Balaram's mercy. So it's by mercy. I mean, things happen by mercy. That. Your question is not so dissimilar. If you want to read it more carefully, Canto 7, Chapter 1. Your question is Mars Yudhishthira's question. The whole chapter is it's foundational to answer that question. And then the rest of the chapter, or excuse me, the rest of the canto is expanding on that answer. How by the mind going to the Supreme Lord, one gets purified, whatever the motive.
So one more question, Maharaj. Like for sadhakas like me, who is struggling lot of anarthas, how can I achieve like Krishna's mercy? Because in material world with the grahastha life, with so many responsibilities, it's very difficult to achieve that bhava, prema, those perfections. It's like above the.
Go step by step. You want to know how to get to the conclusion, you go step by step. So it's pretty simple. I mean, did you send that letter to Vangsidari? Okay. Did he send you the links? So he'll send you the links. We had a seminar on acceptance and progress, and it goes like this. All of us have the experience. The goal is way up here and we're way down here, which is your question. So now, what do? Acceptance. Don't lament or moan or groan or whine or complain or, throw your hands up or beat yourself up. Or don't do any of those things, just acceptance. And what does that mean? It means lots of things. And then make steps in the direction of the goal. And our sadhana bhakti is those steps, and you do steps that are doable. Just like, let me ask you, did you have, I don't need an answer other than yes or no, but did you have some focus during Pandava Nirjala Ekadasi of some way that you would try to do something more that's on the reducing and the increasing? I don't need the answer. I don't need the details. But so that's an incremental thing. I know some devotees, a whole bunch of devotees that got together for Pandava Nirjala Ekadasi, and they chanted 192 rounds. Not 64, not 128, but 192. I can't do that. I mean, I can't even think about doing that. I suppose I could do that. But these are devotees to be cut by, so that didn't start there. They didn't like, hey, Pandava Nirjala Ekadasi, that's 192 rounds. You can't do that. You have to go in increments. A god brother who's somewhere, he said, I haven't disclosed this to anybody, but he's senior citizen now, so he's increasing his rounds, 4 rounds per year, each birthday. So like with kids, do you chant japa every day? How many rounds do you chant every day? Go ahead. 2? 1? You're not sure. 10. So, a suggestion, each birthday, add 1 more round. How old are you now? 8? You're 8 years old? So you do the math. If you're in 6 years, you'll be at 16, if you'd follow that. So you get the idea. So in increments. Now he said, I don't share this with anybody, but my plan is to get, in course of time, to get to 64 every day. It doesn't have to be this formula or that formula. It has to be a principle that here's where I am, here's the goal, there's this big gap between where I am and the goal. And I don't moan and complain and stuff, all that negative stuff. This is acceptance. And what is it that I can maintain on Ekadasis or on appearance days, or something, something, something. And then what's a doable, sustainable step for me? And if you don't make that thought process and step, it tells something about whether there's a desire to reach the goal or not. If there's a desire to reach the goal, it's not so difficult. It's just something. Or something that you can do without, or combination. It does. I'll elaborate. Because you're responding to your question, but it applies to all of us. There was a period of time when there was a very productive bhakti program in New York, and Niranjana Swami at that time was the bhakti leader, and he had this practice that when people wanted to stay in the ashram, there was a space over there where they could stay. They didn't have to comply with all the standards of in the ashram. But then when they moved into the ashram, he took them through this relationship-wise. What are some of the things that you're attached to? Let's make a list. Just kind of have fun and make a list of things I'm attached to. Okay, now let's take a look at the list. Is there one thing on that list you think you can do without? In relationship, it wasn't like arm twisting. It was, yeah, that's the thing I can do without. Okay, fantastic. What are the steps that you can take, and I can support those steps that you can do without? That's something. And then it's their plan, and I'll support your plan, and then they do without that something, and then you have a celebration. Great. Let's go back to the list. What's something else you think you could do? Well, it's easy, it's doable, but you're attached to. So if you have somebody like that in your life, along with Super Soul, and your family members, someone that can help you, then it helps because you have. If you're serious, you'll find a way that you can add something and diminish something, and make some increases. And it doesn't have to be hit a home run. It doesn't have to become a great devotee tomorrow. It means making steps, and then you continue, and then you continue, and then you continue. It's maintain. That's this acceptance and pride. We had all the speakers just had that one theme. And they, of course, different voices saying different things on that theme, and it was very helpful. There's a verse in the 11th canto Bhagavatam in Uddhava Gita section where Krishna speaks like that to Uddhava. And it sure is there in this recording. So he'll send you the link, and you can listen and get answers to your questions beyond this little discussion. And there's so many things to listen to and so many things to do, and we're so busy and so distracted, and it may often come to we just continue the same thing. But if you want to get to the goal, you have to make steps. It's not an automatic process. Just put on fasten your seatbelt, sit down, and you're going to get to the goal. Not an automatic process. It's a devotional process, not a mechanical process. It's a devotional process. We have to want our relationship with Krishna more than something else. And then there's progress. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam all Guru Shri Prabhupada. Very nice class, Maharaj. I was thinking about Paundraka when we were mentioning our class. As Paundraka was thinking that he's a Ishwar, as I also think on some small way Ishwar. And
Yes.
how to get rid of, I'm also acting like in a Paundraka. That's the thing, these all problems are there which is not able to surrender to Krishna.
Hmm.
But at the end, I also know if we do chanting nicely, we'll go away. But as you mentioned, I cannot constantly chant it. Then you mentioned about reading, deity worshiping. Manoj, this is very helpful. Without asking my question, you answered it. But if you can elaborate how to concentrate,
How
because
to
I get
concentrate?
on chanting,
How
because
to concentrate on chanting? Well, this is a japa retreat seminar.
Hare Krishna.
By the way, I'm preparing for the next japa retreat seminar. We call it the Festival of the Holy Name, but I have topics that I want to cover on that subject matter. So I'll just give you a couple bullet points. Bullet point: relationship with Krishna. Chanting is not a process; it's a relationship. It's an appeal to Krishna. It's an appeal to Krishna to accept us in a relationship. And that's notional. And then if it becomes devotional, not just notional, then it's a call, it's a prayer for a relationship. And then it impacts the rest of your life. Is the relationship with Krishna dimension of your life? So I'm going to spend one whole class on that topic. Another is connected to the first one is mindfulness. But it's not just a mechanical mindfulness. It's when there's an attachment to a relationship, then it becomes raga. Until it becomes raga, it's duty. Bhaktivinoda Thakur discusses. There's service that's duty and the service that's with attachment. So bear in mind, if you're just in the service with duty, I do my chanting because it's good for me. I have faith that it's good for me. Although I'm distracted, I know it's good for me. So, how to stay with the mindfulness so it's more than just intermittent, kind of. There's a nice discussion. One of our ISKCON sannyasis explored Patanjali yoga definition of meditation and yoga, and it has 5 stages. And the focus goes to making your effort consistent. When you see that you've gotten distracted, again, go back to the effort to be in your relationship with the name, or striving to awaken your relationship with the name, which is not different than Krishna, but that's the recommendation for us. And then when it's a little bit like deity worship. Some persons have said to me with deity worship that it has become mechanical. I feel, here I am standing here doing so many circles and ringing the bell, and it's become mechanical. So how do you change mechanical into devotional? It takes association, it takes knowledge, it takes devotion to worship and to chant and to hear. And so different persons is going to will find it easier to do one of those things. Some like just serving the devotees. So when you do something nicely, you can bring some strength from that something you do nicely and bring it over here to the thing you're not doing so nicely with. The goal is to be immersed in what you're doing in each moment. That's what mindfulness is. So Puri Jan's way of saying it is one mantra at a time. he wrote a book called Japa, and that's the theme, one mantra at a time. So that's another one of the bullet points. One mantra at a time. And life is made of a series of mantras. So don't worry about the ones you didn't chant so nicely yesterday. Don't obsess about the ones you're going to chant. But when you're chanting, you chant one mantra at a time. Okay. There's other points, but just the essence. You know who Mahatma Prabhu is? Mahatma Prabhu. He lives in Alashua, Prabhupada disciple, very nice devotee. He gives lots of japa retreats. Like, that's one of his specialties, his japa retreats. Like Sachinandan Swami gives lots of japa retreats. So Mahatma does the same. So we were together during Memorial Day weekend, where many people off in Sadhu Sangha retreat. We were together in Potomac. And one of the questions during the final session was, can you give us so what you're doing just now, something to help us increase in chanting? So he did a really short one, which is something I'm going to speak about. Just go show his picture and just copy what he said. It's not just a process, it's a relationship. We're inviting, and so you can pray in the mood of inviting Krishna to accept you in that relationship of service to him, etc., etc. So it's a prayer. Chanting japa is a prayer to appeal to Krishna to accept us again in our relationship with him, or his relationship with us. Because we're weak on this side, we know Krishna's stronger on his side. It's a relationship. It's a relationship, and he'll reciprocate according to our desire for that reciprocation. Exactly according to our desire for reciprocation. I was thinking this when we were reading how Balaram interacted with the residents of Vrindavan when he went to Vrindavan. Each, according to their relationship with him, he reciprocated. Because that's the Supreme Lord. As Krishna does, Balaram does. The reciprocation that we have has everything to do with our regard. The relationship that we feel and hanker for in relation to Krishna. It's in your bead bag. Okay. I'm going to end there. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki.